wilderness can be as unforgiving as it is breathtaking. Imagine venturing into the heart of Siberia, the dense forests of Alaska, or the remote wilds of Canada, only to face nature's most fearsome predators. From seasoned hunters and passionate hikers to adventurous photographers and brothers on a fishing trip, these 6 stories reveal the terrifying power of the wild. Each encounter is a battle for survival, where quick thinking and sheer willpower are the only defenses against a deadly threat. Join us as we explore these gripping tales of humans versus nature, where not everyone makes it out alive. On August 3, 2024, deep in the remote forests of Siberia, Russia, a seasoned hunter named Ivan Petrov set out on what he hoped would be another successful elk hunt. Ivan was known in his village for his skill and experience in tracking and hunting. Born and raised in a small village near the Altai Mountains, he had spent most of his life navigating the dense forests and rugged terrain. The forest was not just a place of work for Ivan, it was his second home. He knew every trail, every sound, and every sign that the wilderness offered. Ivan had begun hunting at a young age, learning the craft from his father, who had also been a hunter. Over the years, he had developed a deep respect for nature and its creatures. For him, hunting was not just about the thrill of the chase or the reward of the catch. It was about the connection with the wild, understanding its rhythms and respecting its power. This respect, however, did not mean he underestimated the dangers that lurked in the forest. Ivan knew that the Siberian wilderness was as unforgiving as it was beautiful. The forests around the Altai Mountains were vast and largely untouched by human activity. The area was known for its rich biodiversity, home to many animals, including elk, wolves, and the formidable Siberian grizzly bear. These bears, massive and powerful, were known to be particularly aggressive, especially when they had just emerged from hibernation. On this particular day, Ivan had spent hours tracking an elk through the forest. The hunt had been challenging, but Ivan's patience and expertise had paid off. By late afternoon, he had successfully brought down a large elk, a testament to his skill. Exhausted but satisfied, Ivan decided to set up camp for the night. The sun was beginning to set, and the deep shadows of the forest signaled that it was time to rest. He chose a small clearing near a stream, a spot that offered fresh water and a clear view of the surroundings. Ivan set about building a fire, preparing to cook his dinner. As the fire crackled and the smell of cooking meat filled the air, Ivan felt a sense of contentment. The day had been long and tiring, but the reward was worth it. He looked forward to a good meal and a night of rest under the stars. Unbeknownst to Ivan, the forest held more than just the usual dangers that night. A grizzly bear, recently awakened from its long hibernation, was nearby. The bear, driven by hunger and aggression, had been wandering through the forest in search of food. The scent of the cooking meat reached the bear, drawing it toward Ivan's camp. The thick underbrush and Ivan's exhaustion masked the approach of the predator. As Ivan stepped away from the fire to fetch water from the stream, he was completely unaware of the danger creeping closer. The bear, now fixated on the source of the smell, moved silently through the trees, its powerful body hidden in the shadows. Ivan, absorbed in his routine, did not notice the threat until it was too late. The peaceful silence of the forest was about to be shattered in a violent confrontation. As Ivan bent down by the stream to fill his canteen, the air around him seemed to shift. The peacefulness of the forest had masked the looming danger, but now an unsettling feeling began to creep into Ivan's senses. He turned his head just in time to see the massive grizzly bear emerge from the shadows, its eyes locked onto him, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its thick fur. In that split second, Ivan's instincts took over. He knew the signs of an aggressive bear, and he understood the grave danger he was in. The bear, driven by hunger and the scent of food, saw Ivan not as a threat but as prey. There was no time to reach for his rifle or think of an escape. The bear charged with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them in moments. Ivan tried to fend off the attack using the only weapon he had, the canteen, but it was no match for the grizzly's sheer power. The bear's claws slashed through the air, and with one massive swipe, it knocked Ivan to the ground. The force of the blow left him dazed, and the world around him blurred as he fought to stay conscious. The bear's ferocity was overwhelming. It continued its assault, driven by an instinctive rage. Ivan, despite his experience and strength, was powerless against the onslaught. The forest, which had always been his ally, now seemed indifferent to his plight. The sounds of the struggle echoed through the trees, but there was no one around to hear them. As quickly as it had begun, the attack ended. The bear, having asserted its dominance, retreated back into the forest, leaving Ivan lying in the clearing. The smell of blood and the remnants of his campfire lingered in the air as the forest returned to its eerie silence. The next day, when Ivan failed to return to the village, a search party was quickly assembled. The locals knew the risks of the Siberian wilderness, and they feared the worst. They followed his trail to the campsite, where the scene told them everything they needed to know. Ivan's mauled remains were found near the stream, a stark reminder of nature's unpredictability and the ever-present dangers of the wild. The news of Ivan's death spread quickly through the village, casting a shadow over the community. The people mourned the loss of a respected hunter, and the event served as a sobering reminder that no one, no matter how experienced, is ever truly safe in the untamed wilderness. The forest, vast and mysterious, had claimed one of its own, leaving behind only memories and a deep respect for the power of nature. In the summer of 2024, Emily Johnson, a passionate hiker from Seattle, set out on an adventure she had dreamed about for years. Emily had always loved the outdoors, and her weekends were often spent exploring the trails near her home, but this time she wanted something more challenging. She decided to embark on a solo trek through the dense forests of Alaska, a place known for its rugged beauty and untamed wilderness. Emily had prepared meticulously for the journey. She had studied maps, packed essential gear, and brushed up on her wilderness survival skills. The forested areas near Denali National Park, with their towering trees and remote trails, were both inviting and intimidating. Emily knew the risks of hiking alone in such a vast and wild place. Still, she felt confident in her abilities and was excited to experience the solitude and majesty of the Alaskan wilderness. The first few days of her trek were everything she had hoped for. The weather was clear, and the forest was alive with the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves. Emily followed the trail with ease, her backpack comfortably holding all her supplies. She took her time, stopping frequently to admire the breathtaking views of the mountains and rivers that surrounded her. As she moved deeper into the forest, the trees grew thicker and the trail became less defined. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Emily was completely immersed in the experience, enjoying the peace and solitude that came with being far from civilization. However, Emily was not alone in the forest. The woods of Alaska are home to a wide variety of wildlife, including black bears, which are known to roam the area. Although Emily had encountered bears before on previous hikes, she had never come this close to their natural habitat. She was aware of the precautions hikers should take, such as making noise to avoid surprising a bear, and always carrying bear spray. On the morning of her fourth day, as Emily continued her trek, she came across a small clearing surrounded by dense undergrowth. She paused for a moment to catch her breath and take in the beauty of the scene. The air was fresh, and the sound of a nearby stream added to the tranquility of the moment. But as she stepped forward to continue her hike, she suddenly noticed movement in the bushes ahead. Emily froze as a large black bear emerged from the underbrush, followed closely by two small cubs. The mother bear, protective of her young, immediately spotted Emily. Her instincts kicked in, and she perceived the lone hiker as a potential threat. The bear's posture changed, and she let out a low growl, warning Emily to stay away. Emily's heart raced as she realized the danger she was in. She knew that turning and running would only provoke the bear to chase her, and she had little time to think. The bear took a step forward, her growl growing louder. Emily quickly reached for the bear spray attached to her backpack, her hands shaking as she fumbled to get it ready. The peaceful solitude of the forest had suddenly turned into a life-threatening situation, and Emily's survival depended on her quick thinking and actions. Emily managed to get a firm grip on the bear spray just as the mother bear took another threatening step toward her. Without hesitating, she aimed the spray at the bear and released a strong burst. The powerful mist spread through the air, reaching the bear's face. Startled by this sudden sensation, the bear halted in her tracks, shaking her head and blinking rapidly. Emily knew this was her only chance to escape. She quickly looked around and spotted a tall tree nearby. Moving cautiously to avoid alarming the bear further, she backed away from the clearing and toward the tree. The bear, still disoriented by the spray, growled again, but she didn't follow Emily immediately. Reaching the tree, Emily began to climb as fast as she could. Her hands gripped the rough bark and she pulled herself up branch by branch until she was safely above the ground. She found a sturdy spot about 20 feet up where she could sit and catch her breath. From her perch, she could see the bear and her cubs still below. The mother bear, recovering from the spray, looked around, confused and agitated. For what felt like hours, Emily remained in the tree, her heart pounding as she watched the bear below. The mother bear paced around the clearing, clearly on edge. Occasionally, she would glance up at Emily, but she did not attempt to climb the tree. The cubs stayed close to their mother, sensing her unease. Emily knew she had to stay as still and quiet as possible, hoping the bear would eventually lose interest and leave. Time passed slowly, and Emily's muscles began to ache from holding her position in the tree. She tried to stay calm, focusing on her breathing and the safety of her perch. The forest, which had once seemed so peaceful, now felt tense and ominous. Finally, as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the mother bear seemed to decide that the threat had passed. She called to her cubs, and the three of them slowly moved away from the clearing and disappeared into the dense undergrowth. Emily waited, making sure the bears were truly gone before she dared to move. Exhausted but relieved, Emily carefully climbed down from the tree. Her legs trembled as she touched the ground, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Before she could gather her thoughts, she heard the faint sound of a voice calling out in the distance. A passing ranger who had heard her distress was approaching. The ranger's timely arrival was a welcome sight, a reminder of the importance of being prepared and vigilant in the wild. Emily knew she had been lucky, and as she made her way back to safety, she carried with her a newfound respect for the unpredictable power of nature. After the harrowing encounter, Emily returned to civilization with a deep sense of gratitude and a renewed respect for the wild. The experience left her shaken, but also wiser. She now understood more than ever the importance of preparedness and caution in the wilderness. Word of her close call spread quickly, serving as a sobering reminder to other hikers of the unpredictable dangers that nature can present. Emily's story became a powerful example of how quick thinking and the right equipment can mean the difference between life and death, reinforcing the crucial need for awareness and respect when venturing into the untamed beauty of the wilderness. In 2017, a group of close friends set out on an adventurous camping trip in the Canadian Rockies, a place renowned for its breathtaking beauty and rugged wilderness. The group, consisting of Mark, Andrea, Jason, and Mandy, had been planning this trip for months. They were all outdoor enthusiasts, eager to spend a few days away from the hustle and bustle of city life, surrounded by the towering peaks and dense forests of Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada. Mark, who had grown up in the countryside, was the most experienced camper in the group. He had spent countless weekends hiking and camping in different parts of the country. Andrea, Jason, and Mandy, while less experienced, shared his love for nature and were excited to explore the Rockies. They had chosen a remote spot near Lake Louise, far from the usual tourist trails, hoping to fully immerse themselves in the tranquility and solitude of the wilderness. The first day of their trip was spent setting up camp and exploring the surrounding area. The air was crisp and cool, and the sky was a clear, brilliant blue. The friends marveled at the stunning landscape with its emerald lakes, dense pine forests, and towering mountains. They hiked along a nearby trail, taking in the sights and enjoying the peacefulness that only the wilderness could offer. As evening approached, the group decided to gather firewood to prepare for a night under the stars. Mark, always the adventurous one, volunteered to venture deeper into the forest to find the best wood, while the others stayed behind to set up the campfire and prepare dinner. Mark's confidence in his abilities led him to wander farther from the campsite than he realized, absorbed in his search for the perfect kindling. Unbeknownst to Mark, he was nearing a dangerous part of the forest. The Canadian Rockies are home to a variety of wildlife, including grizzly bears, which are known to inhabit the area. These bears are particularly protective of their territory, especially during the late summer when they are preparing for hibernation. As Mark gathered wood near a dense thicket, he unknowingly disturbed a grizzly bear's den. The bear, sensing an intruder near its home, reacted with the instinct to defend its territory. Mark, distracted by his task, didn't notice the bear until it was too late. The massive creature emerged from the undergrowth with a roar, its powerful presence dominating the quiet forest. Mark's heart pounded as he realized the grave danger he was in, but he had little time to react. The bear charged at him, its sheer size and speed overwhelming. Mark's scream echoed through the forest, breaking the silence and sending a wave of panic back to the campsite. Andrea, Jason, and Mandy froze for a moment, their minds struggling to comprehend what they had just heard. Then, as the realization set in that Mark was in serious trouble, they grabbed their bear spray and ran toward the sound, their fear for their friend driving them forward into the unknown danger. The three friends ran through the dense forest, their hearts pounding with fear as they followed the sound of Mark's scream. The trees seemed to close in around them, but they pushed forward, knowing that every second counted. As they neared the area where the sound had come from, they saw Mark on the ground, struggling against the massive grizzly bear that had attacked him. Without hesitation, Andrea, Jason, and Mandy raised their bear sprays, aiming at the bear's face. They knew this was their only chance to save Mark. The bear, startled by the sudden burst of the strong spray, backed away, its eyes stinging from the irritant. The bear growled in anger and confusion, but the pain from the spray was enough to drive it back into the undergrowth. Mark lay on the ground, injured and barely conscious but alive. The friends rushed to his side, careful to keep an eye on the surrounding forest in case the bear returned. Mark's clothes were torn, and he was bleeding from deep wounds, but he was breathing. Andrea quickly assessed the injuries, using the first aid kit they had packed to stop the bleeding and stabilize him as best as she could. Jason and Mandy kept watch, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. They knew they had to get Mark back to the campsite and then to safety as quickly as possible. Supporting Mark between them, they carefully made their way back, moving as fast as they could without causing him more pain. The path back to the campsite felt longer and more treacherous, but they were determined to get him the help he needed. Once back at the campsite, they quickly packed up their gear, leaving behind anything that wasn't essential. They knew they had to reach the nearest ranger station for help. The trek back to the trailhead was grueling, with Mark's injuries slowing them down, but they didn't stop. The friends took turns carrying the weight of Mark, their exhaustion tempered by their concern for his life. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the ranger station near Lake Louise. The rangers immediately called for medical assistance, and Mark was quickly airlifted to the nearest hospital in Banff. The doctors confirmed that Mark had suffered severe injuries, but thanks to the quick actions of his friends, he would survive. At the hospital in Banff, Mark was rushed into surgery to treat the deep wounds inflicted by the bear. The medical team worked tirelessly to repair the damage, carefully cleaning and stitching the gashes while monitoring for any signs of infection. Mark had lost a significant amount of blood, and the severity of his injuries meant that his recovery would be long and challenging. His friends waited anxiously in the hospital, the weight of the day's events heavy on their minds. The doctors assured them that Mark was stable, but emphasized that it would take time for him to heal, both physically and mentally. Over the next few weeks, Mark remained in the hospital, slowly regaining his strength. The deep scars on his body were a constant reminder of the encounter, but he remained grateful to be alive. His friends visited him every day, offering support and encouragement. They had faced the danger together, and now they stood by him as he worked toward recovery. As the days passed, Mark's condition improved, and eventually he was able to walk again. The experience had left a lasting impact on all of them, teaching them the true meaning of friendship and the importance of being prepared in the wild. Mark's recovery was a testament to his resilience and the quick thinking of his friends, who had saved his life in the face of overwhelming odds. In September 2019, Sarah and Tom, a dedicated wildlife photographer duo, embarked on a journey to Yellowstone National Park, eager to capture the stunning autumn landscapes and the diverse wildlife that thrived there. The couple had spent years traveling the world, documenting the beauty of nature through their lenses. Sarah, with her keen eye for detail, and Tom, with his talent for capturing motion, made a perfect team. They had a shared passion for the outdoors and a deep respect for the creatures they photographed. Yellowstone, with its vast landscapes and rich biodiversity, was one of their favorite destinations. The park, located in the western United States, stretches across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. It was known for its dramatic scenery, from towering geysers and bubbling hot springs to lush forests and rolling meadows. Autumn in Yellowstone was particularly breathtaking, as the leaves turned vibrant shades of red, orange, and gold, creating a picturesque backdrop for the wildlife that roamed the park. Sarah and Tom had planned this trip months, knowing that the fall season would offer some of the best opportunities to photograph the park's iconic animals against the brilliant autumn foliage. They had packed all their essential gear, including cameras, lenses, tripods, and, most importantly, their food supplies, which they stored carefully to avoid attracting any unwanted visitors. On the morning of their third day in the park, they set out early to photograph a herd of deer that they had spotted the previous evening. The air was crisp, and the early morning light cast a soft glow over the landscape. As they approached a clearing near a dense forest, they saw the deer grazing peacefully, their coats blending beautifully with the warm colors of the fall leaves. Sarah and Tom quietly set up their equipment, taking care to position themselves downwind from the deer to avoid startling them. They spent hours capturing the graceful movements of the herd, thrilled with the shots they were getting. The deer, unaware of their presence, continued to graze and move about the clearing, providing Sarah and Tom with the perfect subjects for their work. As the day wore on, the couple became absorbed in their photography, focused on getting the best possible images. The forest around them was silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves or the soft crunch of the deer's hooves on the ground. It was easy to forget in moments like these that they were in the heart of the wilderness, a place where nature's rules dominated. Unbeknownst to Sarah and Tom, their presence had attracted the attention of a much larger and more dangerous creature. A grizzly bear, recently awakened from its slumber, had caught the scent of the food supplies they had brought with them. The bear, driven by hunger and curiosity, began to make its way toward the clearing, its powerful body moving silently through the trees. Oblivious to the approaching danger, Sarah and Tom continued to work, lost in the beauty of the scene before them. The grizzly, now closer than ever, was hidden by the thick underbrush, its eyes locked on the source of the scent. The tranquility of the moment was about to be shattered by the sudden and terrifying appearance of the park's most formidable predator. As Sarah and Tom continued to photograph the deer, the grizzly bear emerged from the dense forest, its massive form now visible in the clearing. Tom, focused through his camera lens, was the first to notice the movement in the background. At first he thought it was another animal, perhaps a bison or elk, but as the bear drew closer, its sheer size and power became unmistakable. A wave of dread washed over him as he realized the imminent danger they were in. Without wasting a moment, Tom grabbed Sarah's attention, and they quickly assessed the situation. The bear was now fully aware of their presence, and its attention had shifted from their food supplies to the photographers themselves. The grizzly began to move towards them with deliberate intent, its powerful muscles rippling under its thick fur. The tranquil scene they had been enjoying only moments before had turned into a life-threatening situation. Sarah and Tom knew they had only seconds to react. Abandoning their expensive equipment, they made a run for it, heading straight for their car, which was parked a short distance away. The ground seemed to blur beneath their feet as adrenaline took over, urging them to move faster. Behind them, the grizzly bear reached their campsite, drawn by the scent that had led it there. The bear, finding no immediate prey, turned its attention to the gear left behind. With a powerful swipe of its paw, the bear knocked over their tripods and cameras, smashing the expensive equipment with ease. It tore through their bags, scattering lenses and other items across the ground. But when the bear found nothing edible, its interest quickly waned. The grizzly sniffed the air one last time, then retreated back into the forest, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Sarah and Tom, breathless and shaken, reached their car and slammed the door shut, safe from the bear but still reeling from the close call. They watched from the safety of their vehicle as the bear finally left the area, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been their carefully arranged campsite. The couple sat in stunned silence, the reality of what had just happened slowly sinking in. In the aftermath of the encounter, Sarah and Tom drove back to the nearest ranger station to report the incident. The destruction of their gear was a significant loss, but they were grateful to have escaped with their lives. The experience left them deeply humbled, a stark reminder of the risks that come with working in the wild. Despite their love for nature and their years of experience, the encounter with the grizzly taught them that the wilderness is unpredictable and that safety should always come before any photograph. As they reflected on the day, they knew they had been lucky, and the lesson they learned would stay with them on every future journey into the wild. In October 2016, brothers Jack and Sam Mitchell set out on a fishing trip deep in the wilderness of Montana. The Mitchell brothers had always shared a love for the outdoors, having grown up exploring the forests and rivers near their home. Now in their late 20s, they decided to take a break from their busy lives and reconnect with nature in one of the most remote areas they could find. They chose the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, a rugged and untamed region known for its pristine rivers and abundant wildlife, nestled just north of Yellowstone National Park. The brothers had planned the trip meticulously. Jack, the older of the two, was an experienced fisherman, while Sam, though less skilled, enjoyed the time spent with his brother in the great outdoors. They had spent weeks gathering the necessary gear, ensuring they had everything they needed for a few days in the wild. Their plan was simple: hike into a remote part of the wilderness, set up camp by a river, and spend their days fishing for the legendary trout and salmon that the area was known for. The first few days of their trip were idyllic. The autumn colors were in full display, with the leaves of the trees turning shades of red, orange, and yellow. The crisp air and clear skies made for perfect fishing conditions, and the brothers were thrilled with the tranquility of the wilderness. They set up their camp near a quiet stretch of river, far from any signs of civilization, and spent their days casting their lines into the water, sharing stories, and enjoying the peaceful surroundings. On the morning of October 15th, the brothers decided to try their luck at a new spot further upstream. They had heard from other fishermen that this part of the river was particularly good for catching large salmon. Eager for the challenge, they packed up their gear and hiked along the riverbank until they found the perfect spot. The river was fast-moving and deep, with large boulders providing natural pools where the fish might gather. As they cast their lines into the water, they felt a sense of anticipation. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the landscape. Jack was the first to get a bite, and he quickly realized he had hooked something big. With Sam's help, he fought to reel in the fish, and after a few tense minutes, they pulled a massive salmon from the water. The brothers cheered, proud of their catch, and quickly set about preparing the fish for dinner. Unbeknownst to them, they had wandered into a grizzly bear's territory. The Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness was home to a large population of grizzly bears, especially during the fall when the bears were actively feeding to prepare for hibernation. The scent of the fresh fish, combined with the noise of their excitement, caught the attention of a nearby bear. The bear, driven by hunger and instinct, began making its way toward the brothers, its powerful body moving silently through the dense underbrush. As the brothers focused on their catch, they were unaware of the imminent danger approaching. The peaceful atmosphere of the morning was about to be shattered by a sudden and deadly encounter with one of the wilderness's most fearsome predators. As Jack and Sam continued to prepare their catch, the grizzly bear suddenly emerged from the thick underbrush. Its massive frame loomed over the brothers, and its eyes locked onto the salmon they had just caught. The air around them seemed to be still as the brothers froze, realizing the grave danger they were in. The bear, driven by hunger and the instinct to protect its feeding ground, charged at them with terrifying speed. Sam, who was closest to the bear, tried to back away, but the grizzly was too fast. It reached him in seconds, knocking him to the ground with a powerful swipe of its paw. Jack, witnessing the attack, felt a surge of panic but knew he had to act quickly to save his brother. He reached into his gear and grabbed the flare gun they had brought for emergencies. With shaking hands, Jack aimed the flare gun at the bear and fired. The bright light and sudden noise startled the bear, causing it to pause its attack. The bear hesitated, momentarily distracted by the flare. This brief window allowed Jack to pull Sam away from the bear's reach. But the damage had already been done. Sam was severely injured, bleeding heavily from deep wounds inflicted by the bear's claws. The bear, seeing that its prey had been taken from it, slowly retreated into the forest, leaving the brothers alone in the clearing. Jack, his heart racing, knew that Sam needed medical help immediately. He quickly bandaged Sam's wounds as best as he could, trying to stop the bleeding while comforting his brother. Sam was conscious, but in immense pain, his breaths shallow and labored. Jack used their satellite phone to call for help, praying that rescue would arrive in time. As the minutes passed, Jack stayed by Sam's side, doing everything he could to keep his brother awake and calm. But the injuries were too severe, and despite Jack's efforts, Sam's condition continued to worsen. By the time the rescue team arrived, landing a helicopter near the river, it was too late. Sam succumbed to his injuries, leaving Jack devastated and alone in the wilderness. The rescue team, understanding the severity of the situation, offered Jack words of comfort as they helped him onto the helicopter. They transported Sam's body back to civilization, where authorities would take over. Jack, overwhelmed by grief, could barely process what had happened. The wilderness that had once been their sanctuary had turned into the site of a tragic loss. In the aftermath, Jack returned home, burdened by the weight of his brother's death. The incident served as a stark reminder of the dangers that come with venturing into the wild, especially during a time when animals are fiercely protective of their resources. The brothers had always known the risks, but this tragedy brought the reality of those dangers into sharp focus. Jack vowed to honor his brother's memory by continuing to respect the power of nature, always remembering the thin line that separates adventure from peril in the untamed wilderness. In November 2010, Jake Thompson, an experienced but solitary backpacker, embarked on an ambitious journey through the vast and untamed forests of British Columbia. Jake had always been drawn to the wild, finding solace in the isolation and challenge that the wilderness offered. He had spent years honing his survival skills, traveling to remote locations around the world. This trip, however, was meant to be his ultimate test, a solo trek through one of Canada's most rugged and unforgiving landscapes. The forests of British Columbia are known for their dense undergrowth, towering trees, and a variety of wildlife that roam freely through the expansive wilderness. Jake had chosen this area specifically for its remoteness, eager to push his limits and experience true solitude. Equipped with a sturdy backpack, a hunting knife, and basic supplies, he set out with confidence, believing that his years of experience would see him through any challenge. The first few days of his trek were everything he had hoped for. The air was crisp, and the forest was alive with the sounds of nature. Jake navigated the terrain with ease, following the riverbanks and natural landmarks that he had marked on his map. He was careful to conserve his energy and supplies, knowing that the wilderness could quickly turn on those who were unprepared. The isolation was invigorating, and Jake relished the opportunity to disconnect from the modern world. However, as the days passed, the weather began to change. The skies darkened, and a heavy fog rolled in, obscuring the landscape and making navigation increasingly difficult. The dense forest, which had once seemed so inviting, now felt like a labyrinth. Jake's sense of direction faltered, and soon he found himself wandering off course. He realized too late that he was lost. The next few days were a blur of confusion and growing desperation. Jake's food supplies dwindled, and his energy waned as he struggled to find his way back to familiar ground. The forest, once a source of peace, now felt oppressive, its vastness swallowing him whole. Jake knew he needed to stay calm, but the lack of food and the constant strain of navigating the dense underbrush began to take a toll on his body and mind. By the fourth day, Jake was weak and starving, his once steady steps now faltering as exhaustion set in. His survival instincts kept him moving, but he knew his chances were slim if he didn't find help soon. The forest, silent and unforgiving, offered no clues as to where he was or how far he had strayed from his original path. As he stumbled through the trees, Jake's attention was suddenly drawn to a rustling in the undergrowth ahead. His heart raced as he realized he was not alone. Emerging from the shadows was a large black bear foraging for food. The bear, sensing Jake's weakened state, locked eyes with him, its predatory instincts awakened by the sight of such an easy target. Jake, despite his exhaustion, knew he was in grave danger. The wilderness, which had always been his refuge, had now become a deadly threat. Jake knew he had to act quickly. The bear, sensing his vulnerability, began to move toward him, its eyes fixed on what it perceived as an easy meal. With no time to think, Jake instinctively reached for his backpack. It was the only barrier he had between himself and the bear. He swung it off his shoulders and held it in front of him, hoping it would offer some protection. The bear lunged at Jake with incredible force, knocking him off balance. Jake used the backpack to shield himself, but the bear's claws tore through the fabric, leaving deep gashes in the pack and grazing Jake's arm. Despite the pain and fear, Jake fought back with every ounce of strength he had left. He reached for his hunting knife, the one tool he had that might save his life. In a desperate attempt to survive, Jake struck at the bear with the knife, aiming for its side. The blade found its mark, and the bear roared in pain, momentarily stunned by the unexpected resistance. Seizing the opportunity, Jake scrambled to his feet and spotted a tree nearby that looked climbable. Ignoring the searing pain in his arm, he ran to the tree and began to climb, his body fueled by sheer adrenaline. The bear, injured but not defeated, circled the base of the tree, growling and swiping at the trunk. Jake climbed higher, pulling himself onto a sturdy branch out of the bear's reach. He clung to the tree, his heart pounding and his body trembling from the effort. Below him, the bear eventually lost interest, distracted by its own wounds, and retreated back into the forest. Exhausted and bleeding, Jake knew he was in critical condition. He had no idea how long he could hold on in the tree, but he knew he had to stay put. The hours passed slowly, and the cold began to seep into his bones. His vision blurred, and he struggled to stay conscious, but he held on, hoping that someone would find him before it was too late. 3 days later, a search and rescue team found Jake clinging to life, still in the tree where he had escaped the bear. They had been alerted by his family when he failed to return on time, and after an extensive search, they finally spotted him deep in the forest. The rescuers quickly assessed his severe injuries and carefully lowered him from the tree. They airlifted him to the nearest hospital in Vancouver, where doctors worked tirelessly to save him. Despite the seriousness of his injuries, Jake's will to survive kept him alive until help arrived. The doctors were able to stabilize him, but his recovery was long and difficult. In the aftermath, Jake's story became a powerful reminder of the dangers that exist in the wilderness and the thin line between life and death when facing the unpredictable forces of nature. His harrowing experience was shared widely, serving as a testament to human resilience and the importance of being prepared for anything when venturing into the wild.